Hey everyone, today we are completing our reading of the Gospel of John together. We are in John chapter 21, the final chapter of John's Gospel. Now in this chapter, John shares the third experience that the disciples have with Jesus following his resurrection from the dead. Now John sets the scene and says that Peter has decided to go fishing and 6 other disciples go with him. They spend the entire evening fishing, but catch no fish. And just as the sun is about to come up, they notice someone on the shore, and this person, they don't know him to be Jesus at this point. This person says, "Why don't you try throwing your net on the other side of the boat?" And so at their wits' end, from a frustrating night of catching no fish, they do that. And what do you know? They catch 153 large fish. And immediately, John writes that he saw that this was the Lord, that this was Jesus. And Peter then, out of excitement, out of not being able to wait for the boat to go into shore, he jumps into the water and swims to Jesus. Now, in verse 9, John sets the scene for what's going to happen next. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them, fish cooking over a charcoal fire and some bread. The 6 of the disciples have come to shore, and Jesus has prepared a charcoal fire, and they sit down to have breakfast together. After the meal, Jesus turns to Peter, and this is what happens, starting in verse 15. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," Peter replied. "You know I love you." "Then feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know I love you." "Then take care of my sheep," Jesus said. A third time he asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep." Now, before we go further into this scene, I want to jump back a couple chapters and highlight some similarities between another important event that happened in Peter's life. We're going to jump back to chapter 18, starting in verse 15. But just to set the scene, Jesus has been betrayed and he was arrested, and he is being taken in to being questioned before the high priest. And this is where we find Peter, starting in verse 15. Simon Peter followed Jesus, as did another of the disciples. That other disciple was acquainted with the high priest, so he was allowed to enter the high priest's courtyard with Jesus. Peter had to stay outside the gate. Then the disciple who knew the high priest spoke to the woman watching at the gate, and she let Peter in. The woman asked Peter, "You're not one of that man's disciples, are you?" "No," he said, "I am not." Because it was cold, the household servants and the guards had made a charcoal fire. They stood around it, warming themselves, and Peter stood with them, warming himself. Peter goes on to deny Jesus for a total of 3 times. Around a charcoal fire, in both of these instances, Peter was posed a question 3 different times. Peter denies that he knows Jesus. Out of fear, he denies the one he has so faithfully followed for the past couple of years. And yet, fast forward to his time on the beach with Jesus, and he isn't met with condemnation or judgment. Rather, he is met with a question that shows that Jesus is far more concerned with Peter's heart for him than potentially scolding him for his disobedience. Jesus knows that out of a heart for him, that from a truly surrendered and faithful heart to Jesus, repentance will follow. Change in conduct and behavior will follow. Transformation will follow. But Jesus is all about that relationship first and foremost. So, Peter, he asks, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, Lord, I love you. And so Jesus says, okay, feed my sheep. I have a job for you to do. Dedicate your life to loving and serving others, to sharing the message of my love with others. Peter went on to be a prominent leader in the early church, and his influence is pivotal in the furthering of the gospel. Jesus challenges us in this same way, but first, he invites us into a relationship with him, a relationship that is defined by unconditional and sacrificial love. So, whatever your past, whatever thing you are still having shame or guilt over, Jesus invites you into a relationship with him and says, I love you. I love you, and I want to be in a relationship with you. So, fill in your name here. Do you love Jesus? What is he then calling you to do in response? In the same way that he empowered Peter to then go on and do incredible things for the furthering of Jesus' kingdom here on earth, he has a plan for your life that only you can fulfill. And out of a relationship with him, you can take that one faithful step at a time.
If these devotional videos are helpful to you, subscribe to our channel and click the notification button so you know when we post a new video. And of course, please share them with others.